So Keir Starmer, of course, he wanted just to talk about this today. He was grilled about the American stuff, but let's look at what he wanted us all to be focused on our conversations this evening. Listen.
Another marker of the future, with the launch of a new organisation that we hope will transform not just how we train our young people and adults, but also the relationship between business and your education system. A plan to make sure that we're training young people not just for any business, but for the businesses that exist in their communities, the skills that you and they need to take each other forward.
So, of course, there's many things behind this. Many people are saying if Labour are going to reduce the dependency on migration, well, how are you going to do it? Perhaps this is one of the answers.
Well, I can't fault the initiative. Of course, the initiative's great, bringing skills back to British population. I've seen in my own lifetime how we've given up skill after skill after skill. You know, I'm in property and in the building process, we've just given it all up, and soon we won't be able to build buildings because it'll all be done with Meccano pre-designs and, you know, three-dimensional technology and stuff, which will prefab houses and they'll just be put together and they'll all be blooming awful to behold and live in. So I'm a big believer in bringing skills back, but we've got to remember it was the Labour Party that abolished the polytechnics and upgraded them all to universities, got rid of perfectly valid, useful degrees which gave you proper skills that you could use in the real world, and replaced them with, you know, all these Mickey Mouse degrees that we discuss or have discussed on this programme, apart from in other places. And I'd like to see how this works out, whether it is just another virtue signalling move by the Labour government to give the impression that they're doing something, or whether it is a genuine effort to do it. But it has to also come hand in hand with reforming the tax system. If you want the kinds of skills that we need to operate as a country, plumbers, builders, you know, I'm speaking from personal experience because of the industry that I'm involved in, you've got to get rid of IR35. You've got to make it a pleasant environment for people to be sole traders. You've got to make it worth their while to do it. You've got to increase, for example, the VAT threshold from the £93,000 per annum that it's set at to 150,000 minimum. You know, it's not a one policy step that's going to fix our broken skills, our absence of skills. We've got to have a holistic approach to it.
And I'm sure they would argue that that is indeed what is coming our way. Jo, what do you make to it?
Well, I have to say, I mean, I agree with Ben on what Tony Blair did by wanting to have 50% of children going to university and completely forgot the other 50%. And we've always had a problem in this country, which I think is deeply rooted in snobbery, where we've never had the proper respect and regard for people who are skilled, whether they're electricians or builders or hairdressers or care workers or anything. They're always at the bottom of the pile. And I think that's been endemic, that we've never valued that. And I think, you know, what Ben says about getting rid of polytechnics and the old technical schools was a terrible mistake, because they weren't replaced with anything. So you end up with people going to schools and coming out having done, you know, some sort of half-assed GCSE and
bottomed. Sorry, everybody.
Sorry, one-cheeked. Shall we say it like that?
I was impressed, Jo. I was going to come in right behind you.
Well, one buttock idea of, you know, a little bit of business studies, a little bit of this, that, and the other, and not doing things. So I think apprenticeships are a really good thing. And there have been various incarnations of this, as Ben knows. Some of them have been accused by employers of being so cumbersome and so red tape heavy that they're almost impossible to work. And the other thing is the abuse of it, which has happened particularly in the bigger organisations, where instead of going and getting young people in, that they've used it to retrain older people within their own organisation.
Yeah, but you can do that. And
yes,
this is a misunderstanding about apprenticeships, is people think it's just for young kids entering the world of work for the first time, and it isn't. There's no age limit. And I think that's brilliant, because loads of people, loads of viewers will be watching, and they've been perhaps, I don't know, made redundant or whatever, and they find themselves in a situation where they need to reskill. And ageism, I do believe ageism is still a thing in the world of work, and I applaud actually that employers do take that money and do apply it to older workers to help them.
Yes, but not if they're already in an organisation. I mean, it should be for new people, whether they're old or young.
Unemployed people, you mean?
Well, unemployed or newly entering the jobs market at whatever age. No,
why? If you've got an entry-level role in an organisation, why shouldn't you be able to get access to skills, training, and so on and so forth to progress yourself?
Well, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I think where there has been abuse is where an organisation, and this has been particularly prevalent, I understand, in the public sector, where they've taken the money, so they haven't actually employed any new person or trained a new person. So they've taken the money on top of, the person they've already got.
And I guess the flip side, and I know many people will have experienced this themselves as well, lots of organisations took this money and take this money. They employ young people on an apprenticeship wage to do, menial jobs, but then they don't support it with the right amount of training.
Yeah, exactly.
They try and do whatever it is at a minimal level to tick the box to get this cash.
Yeah.
And actually what that young person ends up with is not a lot, really.
No, I mean, actually, what we do need is formal training in skills, in genuine skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is, if this works, I think it's a good thing. And the fact that they're bringing in the chap from the co-op, Richard Pennycook, and bringing in other people, it might pull together some of the good bits from previous schemes and look at some of the things that didn't.
In Singapore, there's a great scheme, and it's something like all residents get, I don't know how much it is, I'll say £500, but I don't know the exact sum. So you all get an amount of money, and you can use it to skill yourself, skills credits or something they're called. So you all have pots of money that you can access to develop and advance yourself as an individual. And I think that's absolutely
Singapore
fabulous.
has got so much right. It runs a fantastic economy. I'm not sure I completely buy into their politics, but the way that they run themselves as an economy is phenomenal.
So do you think, then, that this will go somewhere in terms of trying to reduce the levels of legal migration? Because that is a question that many people will be wondering
Well, it's critical,
about.
but I come back to the holistic approach. If it's very cumbersome, if, for example, we continue with this precautionary principle, highly regulated environment in which we operate, and you can only practice as a sole practitioner if you've got insurance, if you meet all the health and safety standards, if you have to report on your own carbon footprint when you do your job. I sent you something by email, by text today on carbon footprints and stuff. If that's the kind of burdensome economic environment that this Labour Party is going to go on championing, then no amount of repurposing people, giving them skill sets they need to do this great sort of artisan stuff is going to work, because they won't be able to afford to do it. You've got to reform the tax system, you've got to get rid of VAT, you've got to deregulate, you've got to liberate SMEs. And this is one of the things about Brexit, was to get rid of the EU so that we could deregulate, champion 96% of businesses in this country by number are small and medium-sized enterprises.
If you make it easier and more attractive for businesses, then that's a good thing. But the other thing that needs to be examined is, where is the old day release? There is a point you can learn an awful lot on the job, but at some point you maybe have to go into a workshop, whether it's to learn welding or bricklaying or hairdressing. You can't do it all on the job. And so many further education and technical colleges have cut those courses or just simply don't offer them, that it makes it quite difficult. And so I think, just very quickly, the point that Keir Starmer makes about what is needed regionally or locally is really, really good. And you can see that already beginning to work with the regional mayors.
He's talking the talk.
But
it's whether they walk the walk.
Well, if you need a lot of builders on Teesside, then it makes sense to be offering those sort of things. If you need a lot of care workers in Manchester...
But do you not agree, Jo, that in isolation it's not going to solve the problem?
No, it's got to be joined up, because it's other things, like, as Michelle touched on, an apprenticeship wage is £5 an hour.
Lots of you are getting in touch about this. Hazel said, I've contacted you many times about this. She says, our grandson finishes apprenticeship. He's now a qualified bricklayer with all of his certificates and whatnot. She says he cannot get a job there at many building sites. She reckons that the building sites where they live, they only want to employ foreign workers because they're cheaper. Is that your experience at home? Get in touch and tell me your thoughts. Lee says, Michelle, I've got some friends that have got 60 18-year-old children, they're not interested in going to college, they're not very academic, they don't want to go on and continue that path, they just want to work, he says, but unless they do an apprenticeship, they don't seem to be able to do it. Rob, you said you've got an idea. How about if anyone that's currently on benefits enters the world of work, they should have a period of paying lower tax? What do you think to that? Quickly.
I think it's great. I think so much can be done to incentivise different behaviour, positive behaviour through the taxation system, and we just don't do it enough. We use the government uses the taxation system effectively to punish us.
But you can, there's lots of things you can do, incentives like transport. If you're only earning apprenticeship wages, you can't afford the cost of.
Can I just quickly finish? There's been a debate on the Albert Memorial and whether or not it's an offence to. You look at the skill required to create the Albert Memorial. It is phenomenal. And we talk about being a poorer society today in economic and monetary terms. We are a poorer society altogether. What they could do 200 years ago, in many respects, belittles what we can do now. That's how hollowed out we've become.
There you go. And I think, one of the most important, I'm going to sound like an old grandma now, but one of the most important things I think we could do with teaching young kids is all about the benefits of delayed gratification, because actually you can take an apprenticeship or something at a lower wage today. Yes, you might earn a little bit less than your peers, your friends at the moment in time, but what you can then achieve later on in life can far surpass some of your mates. But the problem is, so many young people, they just want instant gratification.